I know a lot of Steelers fans out there are really frustrated with the way that the Aaron Rodgers saga has unfolded over the last several weeks, and a lot of people are ready to give up on pursuing Aaron Rodgers, but I still think that the four-time NFL MVP will eventually sign on the dotted line to be the next starting quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Today on Steelers Talk, I'm going to be explaining why I still think that, and then the reasonings why Rodgers is taking so long to make his final decision. But before we get into the content today, tomorrow we have our 3-round live mock draft here at Chat Sports, where all of our big channels, Steelers, 49ers, Raiders, Cowboys, all these big channels, Bears, we're all going live, and we are doing a live mock draft together where all the top Chat Sports hosts are going to be making picks live in a 3-round mock draft where all of our channels are going to be live. It's going to be a big deal. So we will be going live on this channel 45 minutes before the Tennessee Titans will be on the clock. We'll be going live tomorrow at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. So make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already, and then join us tomorrow at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time for a lot of fun for the hopefully new tradition here at Chat Sports of the NFL mock draft here by Chat Sports 1 week before the NFL draft begins. Okay, so let's get into the latest on Aaron Rodgers here. And I do still think that Aaron Rodgers is most likely going to eventually sign on the dotted line to be the next starting quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers, even though it is taking a long time for him to come to that final decision. And, I think when you look at the Rodgers situation, I think I want to say this up front here. Before I go into the details of why I still think Rodgers is going to sign on here in Pittsburgh, I fully acknowledge that it is a legitimate possibility that Aaron Rodgers just does not want to play for the Pittsburgh Steelers next season, and he's waiting for a quote-unquote better opportunity elsewhere, and he just doesn't really think he can win here in Pittsburgh. Some other options that have been discussed in the media, especially as of late, the Minnesota Vikings, even though the Vikings apparently told him directly they are not pursuing him this season, some people are still speculating that he is kind of waiting around, hoping that J.J. McCarthy kind of craps the bed during OTAs and during the offseason program, and then he can sneak in at the last second. Some people have speculated also the 49ers could be waiting on them to see if the Brock Purdy contract negotiations fall through during the offseason this year. And some people, including the people on the Pat McAfee show, by the way, have suggested maybe he's looking at the New Orleans Saints after Derek Carr's shoulder injury has put his 2025 status in jeopardy. But I really don't think Rodgers would prefer the New Orleans Saints, who just hired a new head coach. They're kind of a rebuilding team. They have no cap space. Over the Pittsburgh Steelers that have a head coach that has been here for almost 20 years straight. They've got an offensive coordinator who runs an offense that he would be comfortable with. You got 2 deep threat receivers here. You got a great defense. I just don't think the Saints are a situation that he would prefer. So I still do think that Aaron Rodgers will be Pittsburgh's QB1 in 2025. But the question is, and you're probably sitting at home, all right, Jack, so you say that he wants to be the Pittsburgh Steelers starting quarterback. Why the hell hasn't he signed yet? Well, my theory on this, guys, is I think he wants as much clarity on the 2025 Steelers roster as he can possibly get before he signs on the dotted line. And right now, the only other thing that's left to do in the NFL offseason in terms of talent acquisition and kind of finalizing this roster is the 2025 NFL draft, which of course is just over a week away at this point. And, the fact that this thing has gone as long as it has, almost 3 weeks now since Russell Wilson signed with the New York Football Giants, and the Steelers have really been Rodgers' only option. He still hasn't signed on. It certainly seems like he is going to be waiting until after the draft to make his final decision. And he might be saying at home, why would he wait until after the NFL draft? Well, it's pretty simple, guys. I think that it would give Aaron Rodgers a clearer picture of what the entire roster would look like. He doesn't want to, sign on to the Steelers and they take a bunch of players he doesn't like and doesn't want to play with, or maybe there's some trades. And I think that it does protect him from a deal-breaker move. All right, like last year with Kirk Cousins, he signed on with the Atlanta Falcons, and they draft his replacement in the first round, completely blindsiding him. Aaron Rodgers doesn't want to get blindsided by a move that Omar Khan makes during the NFL draft. Like, for example, what if they trade T.J. Watt unexpectedly? Or what if they trade George Pickens away and Rodgers really wanted to play with him? Rodgers, if he signs before the NFL draft and then they make that move that he's really not expecting and doesn't want to happen, then, if that's a deal breaker for him, maybe he doesn't want to sign on the dotted line until the NFL draft has come and gone to see who exactly is on this roster before he officially commits another year of his life to play NFL football for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, obviously, as Steelers fans, we want him to sign as soon as he possibly can. And the sooner he signs, the better, all right? Because the sooner he signs, the more this is locked up. The players know who their quarterback is. You can start building up chemistry, and we have a plan heading into 2025. But in reality, if Rodgers waits till after the draft, it doesn't really affect the team all that much in terms of team development here, guys, because you take a look at the offseason phases that the Pittsburgh Steelers will be going through this offseason. Phase 1, which begins actually next week, April 21st, it's team meetings, it's strength and conditioning with the team, and then you got rehab, and that's all you can do, all right, all the way up for the next 2 weeks, where May 5th, which is right after the draft, you can start practicing on the practice field. You can do individual drills. You can even do walkthrough type of stuff, but you can't do the team drills with the offense and defense going up against each other with or without pads. Then in phase 3, which is OTAs, you can start having those O&D periods without the pads on. That starts May 27th, and of course that concludes with mandatory minicamp, and then you get into training camp where, of course, the pads come on, all that different stuff, and all the fun festivities take place in Latrobe. So, Rodgers can't even take official reps on the field at the Steelers training facility with his guys until May 5th. All right, and the NFL draft concludes on April 27th. So that gives him a little bit of time there to look over the roster, be 100% crystal clear about what that roster is going to look like, and then make his final decision. It certainly seems to me like that decision is going to be to sign with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and it seems the Steelers know that. All right, but he can't work out at the team facility until, with his guys on the practice field until May 5th, but he can work outside of the facility. He can, do what Russell Wilson's doing with the Giants right now, getting all of his guys together in one location outside of the team facility and start throwing with each other. And guess what? Aaron Rodgers is already beginning that work. Of course, he had that throwing session with DK Metcalf, and that's the only throwing session that we know about. There could be more. He could have had another one with Metcalf. He could have had more with other Steelers players that was more secretive and didn't get reported out there. But, the fact that first meeting, and, Rodgers took all these pictures and did that video where he's throwing that dig route to DK Metcalf, he obviously gave permission for that to go out there because he might be sending a message to Pittsburgh Steelers fans at that point. He probably knew at that point, man, you know what? I just want to make 100% sure that this is what I want to do. I'm going to wait till the NFL draft, but I'm going to do a throwing session with the number 1 receiver in Pittsburgh, and I'm going to take all these pictures, and I'm going to let it go out on social media so that Steelers fans can pretty much know I'm going to be coming there. I'm going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers starting quarterback. I just need to get that final clarity with what they do in the NFL draft here in 2025 before I feel comfortable signing on the dotted line. And, to me, there's just too many signals of Rodgers' interest in the Pittsburgh Steelers to think that he's not going to want to be a Pittsburgh Steeler next season. You take a look at these here. He invited himself, according to Tom Pelissero, on a 6-hour visit to the Steelers facility. Again, spending hours with offensive coordinator Arthur Smith, watching film, building an offensive game plan together. Then he also had a well-reported throwing session, like we talked about with DK Metcalf. Also, Pittsburgh, based on the way they were talking about this situation in Palm Beach a couple weeks ago at the NFL owners meetings, they have unwavering confidence that he is going to sign with them, and they still seem like very sure that Rodgers is eventually going to sign with the team, despite the fact that the Steelers have been their only option, or his only option, for weeks now, and still hasn't signed on. And then also, Rodgers hasn't told the Steelers that he isn't interested, which is a little bit weird. And, when I look at what the Steelers have been saying with Mike Tomlin, dropping all these hints that he knows when Aaron Rodgers is going to make this decision, all that stuff, unless it's just straight up hubris from Mike Tomlin, Omar Khan, and Art Rooney, which is, by the way, very possible, why would the Pittsburgh Steelers be so confident that Rodgers would sign with them? Unless they had some sort of assurance from Aaron Rodgers that he would eventually sign on to be their starting quarterback, as Jeremy Fowler from ESPN has alluded to in previous reporting. He has said that people in Russell Wilson's camp and people in NFL league circles believe that Aaron Rodgers has already given the Pittsburgh Steelers some sort of quote-unquote loose assurance that he's going to sign with the football team at some point this offseason. And then another thing to consider here, guys, and I know a lot of you just don't like Aaron Rodgers as a person, and I completely understand the reasons why that is. But don't you think you'd have a little bit of courtesy there to let the Pittsburgh Steelers know that, thank you guys for your interest, but I'm not interested in joining the team? That hasn't happened. He hasn't let the Pittsburgh Steelers know that he doesn't want to go play for them, and the Steelers are still actively waiting for him to make that final decision. So I think it's a little bit weird that somebody with Aaron Rodgers, who has a lot of respect for Mike Tomlin, by the way, is not doing him the courtesy of telling him, I don't want to play for you guys this season, if that's what it actually is the case. So I do think Rodgers is interested for playing for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and you might be saying at home, but Jack, couldn't retirement be on the table? Could he be pondering just retiring at this point in time? And listen, man, anything's on the table at this point. With him taking as long as he's taking, maybe he is legitimately contemplating retirement. But I think every single signal that we have gotten from Aaron Rodgers to this point in the offseason tells me that he's not looking to retire. All right, he told the New York Jets himself, according to Albert Breer, he said in their exit meeting, I don't want to retire. I want to play in 2025. Then he's been doing all this research, having conversations with teams like the Vikings and Steelers. He's been working out with DK Metcalf. He's been working out at his training facility in LA all offseason long. These are not signs of somebody that, is looking to hang up the cleats. All right, I think Aaron Rodgers still feels he has a little bit left in the tank. And I do think because of the interest that he has shown in the Pittsburgh Steelers, I think eventually he's going to sign on and he's going to be the starting quarterback of this football team in 2025. I will say kind of the landmark, all right, kind of the next kind of spot where I would expect Aaron Rodgers to make his decision by somewhere between April 25th and April 30th. Not May 30th right there, April 30th. I think I scripted that wrong, producer Joey. But, I do think that little stretch, day 2 of the NFL draft to the end of the month, is kind of the wiggle room that we have here. And I think that's the point in time where you have to keep your eye on here, because I think that's when Aaron Rodgers is going to make his final decision. And honestly, guys, if we get to the month of May and he's had multiple days after the NFL draft to look at the roster and all this different stuff, and he still hasn't signed, he doesn't want to play for the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? And Rodgers doesn't even have to tell them that he's not interested. The Steelers should just know at that point that Aaron Rodgers does not want to play for the Pittsburgh Steelers at that point. And I think if we get to the month of May and Rodgers still hasn't let the Steelers know, at least officially, I think Pittsburgh has to move on. So predict it for me down there in the comment section. Will Aaron Rodgers be Pittsburgh's Week 1 starter for this season? Give me a yes or a no down there in the comment section. This will be the pinned comment on today's show. YouTube's going to throw an ad break here in just a few seconds, and I'll be telling you about our sponsor today at Game Time. And while I'm talking about Game Time today, give me a yes or a no for today's pinned question. And with that, let's have word from our sponsor today at Game Time. And the NBA playoffs are getting started, and you want to experience the energy and stakes of playoff basketball. You can get great seats at guaranteed low prices with our friends at Game Time today. Game Time makes getting tickets faster and easier, all on your phone. You can save up to 60% off buying last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy shows, theater performances, and even for hard-to-get playoff seats. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. And with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA playoff tickets. The Cleveland Cavaliers have locked up the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference this season heading into the playoffs, and you can experience their playoff run in the weeks to come, just over a 2-hour drive from Pittsburgh. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time today. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CHATSPORTS. It's one word, all caps, CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CHATSPORTS. It's right down there in the bottom right of your screen right now, CHATSPORTS. One word, all caps, CHATSPORTS for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Now, before I go, I do have a theory about the NFL draft that ties into my theory about Aaron Rodgers, all right? And because I think that the Steelers feel really good that Rodgers will eventually sign on to be this team's starting quarterback in 2025, they may see the NFL draft, especially round 1 of the NFL draft, as kind of a final pitch to Rodgers, all right? This could be an opportunity for them to show that they are committed to him, that they are committed to winning now, and, by probably foregoing taking a quarterback in round 1. But we'll get to that here in just a second. But, what would make Aaron Rodgers the happiest with the first-round selection this year? That might be the focus for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They want to make that final pitch. They want to get Rodgers excited to play for the Pittsburgh Steelers and be the quarterback of this offense next year. What's the best way that they could do that? The answer is you get another offensive weapon for him to utilize. All right, right now you got DK Metcalf, you got George Pickens, you got a couple of decent supplementary receivers in Calvin Austin III and Roman Wilson, and you got Pat Freiermuth, a really good receiving tight end. I think that the one offensive weapon that they really need to add in this draft is another really good running back to pair with Jaylen Warren. And I think the two guys you got to be keeping your eye on specifically in round one are Amarian Hampton out of North Carolina and TreVeyon Henderson out of Ohio State. They have done a ton of research on these two guys. TreVeyon Henderson, Tomlin and Khan were at the pro day, top 30 visit, and a formal combine meeting. All right, that's the holy trinity right there when it comes to TreVeyon Henderson. Then Amarian Hampton didn't have Khan and Tomlin at his pro day, but he did have that top 30 visit. He did have a formal combine meeting. The Steelers really like Hampton a lot. If he's there at 21, I think he could be the pick. And you guys can take a look at the potential 2025 offense. Rodgers would be the quarterback here. And then you got George Pickens, DK Metcalf as your two receivers. You got Amarian Hampton as your number one running back. Jaylen Warren as the change of pace back that he's been doing such a good job of in his Steelers tenure. You got Pat Freiermuth as your receiving tight end. And then the Steelers, they've made this abundantly clear. They love the investment that they've made on the offensive line. They think Broderick Jones is going to play a lot better at left tackle as opposed to how he played at right tackle these last two seasons. Zach Frazier and Sayamalo are rock solid. They really believe in Mason McCormick and his ability to transition from left guard to right guard, from college to pro. They think that he's going to make a fantastic leap forward next year. And then Troy Fautano didn't even play really his rookie season because of knee issues. And if he's on the field, he's going to be an absolute stud as well. So my round one thoughts here, guys. I do think that the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to attempt to trade down in round one. I think they would love to get an additional day two pick. But this is kind of a buyer's market right now, or at least that's what's being reported about this NFL draft, because it's not the best draft class in the world. There's not a lot of people looking to trade up. So there's certainly a possibility the Steelers have to stick and pick at number 21. And if that's the case, trade down or not, I wouldn't be shocked, and I don't want you to be shocked as a fan of the Pittsburgh Steelers if they take a running back with their first overall selection in this year's NFL draft. But, Jack, you might be saying at home, what if Rodgers flakes on the draft? If we take a running back in round one and then Rodgers decides to wait for Minnesota or retire or wait for San Francisco, then we're screwed, right? Well, I think that, what the Pittsburgh Steelers would do as a contingency plan at that point is that they would shift to trying to trade for another veteran quarterback, somebody like Kirk Cousins, who could certainly be dealt at some point this offseason and would be a good fit for what Arthur Smith wants to do here in Pittsburgh. Or someone like Derek Carr, where there's certain rumblings going around right now. We did a video on it earlier today where he may be looking to be traded this offseason, and he's a great fit for what the Steelers are looking to do. Plain and simply, guys, the Pittsburgh Steelers are trying to win now, all right? And the reality of the situation is rookie quarterbacks don't win playoff games. So I really don't see the Pittsburgh Steelers in the market to draft a starting quarterback to play this year. I think that they want a veteran quarterback to be their starter, and then I do think they will draft a quarterback this year, but I think that's going to be more of a developmental type of quarterback that they take in the middle rounds as opposed to somebody that they expect to be their starting quarterback at some point during the 2025 season, which is why I think that some of the QB hype and some of the rumors and the mock drafts that we're seeing, it's a little bit overblown because, the vibe that I'm getting from the Pittsburgh Steelers is that, they're not really showing enough interest in these top quarterbacks that are going to go round one, in this class. All right, Shadur Sanders just got a top 30, no combine formal, and then there wasn't a lot of representation at the Colorado Pro Day. Similar thing with Jackson Dart. He did get that combine formal and a top 30, but not a lot of representation at his Pro Day. All right, I would think if you're going to take a quarterback in round one, you would want your brass and you would want your head coach and your GM to watch him throw live at his pro day if you were going to take him. They were there for Kenny Pickett's pro day. Of course, it was held in Pittsburgh, but, they were attending all of the first-round quarterback pro days that year during the 2022 draft. They didn't do that this year, all right? And I think that when you look at what the Steelers do in terms of the players that they target in round one, right, usually they have a combine formal meeting in Indianapolis. Tomlin and Khan are at the pro day, or at the very least, the position coach for the Steelers is there at the pro day, and then they have a top 30 draft visit. This year, there are 9 players that fit into this description for the Steelers, and none of them are quarterbacks, all right? 4 receivers, 2 corners, a safety, and 2 running backs. One of them, by the way, is TreVeyon Henderson, who I think you should keep your eye on. But the Steelers, with their usual criteria for taking a quarterback in for taking a player in round one, none of the quarterbacks in this year fit that criteria. So I kind of think Pittsburgh is kind of setting their sights on a quarterback in round 3 or in round 4, a middle round guy that they feel can develop into a future starting quarterback for them down the road. Somebody like a Jalen Milroe, if he falls to them at number 83. Tyler Shuck out of Louisville, if he falls to them at number 83. Certainly a possibility. Will Howard out of Ohio State. Quinn Ewers and Kyle McCord are other guys that have some starter tools that the Steelers may view and say, hey, man, this guy could maybe develop behind Aaron Rodgers for these next 2 years and maybe, just maybe, be our franchise quarterback option when Cam Hayward retires, when Rodgers leaves, and you have a little bit less urgency to win now. So let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. Which of these 5 quarterbacks would you prefer to take in the middle rounds? All right. Do you prefer Milroe? Do you prefer Shuck? Do you prefer Howard, Ewers, or McCord? Let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. That'll be it for today's edition of Steelers QB Rumors. Really do appreciate you guys sticking with me to the end of today's video. I know it's a little bit of a longer one, and I appreciate you guys supporting myself, gaslighting myself on Aaron Rodgers here. We'll see what ends up happening with this entire saga. But I truly believe that he is going to sign on eventually to be this team's starting quarterback. And if that happens, we will be going live right here on this channel. So again, tomorrow, 1:30 p.m. Eastern time, we're going live for that 3-round live Chat Sports mock draft. Do not be late. Click that subscribe button if you haven't already. Until next time, guys, here we go, Steelers.